Okay, let's dive into this. You've got these huge figures in tech: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, the sort of Broligarchs, as some call them.
Right.
And they all seem to really admire the same science fiction writer, Iain M.
Which is interesting because Banks, well, he wasn't exactly shy about his politics. He was pretty openly socialist, very critical of big money.
Exactly. He famously described his main series, the Culture series, as being about, and this is a great quote, hippie commies with hyperweapons and a deep distrust of both marketolatry and greedism.
Yeah, marketolatry, his term for basically worshiping the market, and greedism for, well, just endless greed.
So the core of what we're digging into today is this apparent contradiction.
Wow.
You have these guys who are, titans of capitalism, really loving books by someone who seems to stand against a lot of what they represent.
It's puzzling. What are they actually taking away from these stories?
Right. And that's where this Vox article comes in, making a strong case that maybe, just maybe, they're fundamentally missing the point of the Culture series.
So we'll be looking closely at that argument.
Yeah, and we're also going to pull in Banks' own words, specifically his really detailed notes on the culture he posted online way back in '94 to see what he intended.
So the mission today is really to explore why they like these books and whether that Vox article is right. Are they just seeing the cool spaceships and ignoring the socialist utopia bit?
Or is there something else going on? It makes you think, can you love the art but ignore or even oppose its core message?
It's a good question.
Let's look at how public their admiration is. I mean, Jeff Bezos, back in 2018, he called the Culture series one of his absolute favorites.
Yeah, I remember that interview. He specifically mentioned the utopian element being attractive.
Right. And he even tried to get an adaptation going at Amazon, though it didn't ultimately happen.
And Zuckerberg picked Player of Games, one of the culture novels, for his book club in 2015.
So, not just casual reading. They've clearly engaged with it.
But Musk seems like the most outspoken fan, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. He's the one who named SpaceX drone ships after ships from the Culture books. Just read the instructions. Of course, I still love you.
Iconic names if you know the series.
And the original idea for Neuralink, he called it Neural Lace, which is straight out of Banks' novels. Plus, he actually declared himself, this was in 2018, a utopian anarchist of the kind best described by Iain Banks.
Which sounds quite specific. But you have to remember the context, right? This was before a lot of his more recent political commentary, the whole woke mind virus stuff.
That's a really important point. That 2018 statement lands differently now. Does his idea of utopian anarchism actually match Banks's, or is it selective?
Maybe focus more on the tech freedom aspect, less on the communal socialist structure.
Could be, because when you actually look at the culture itself, I mean, the society Banks wrote about, it's fundamentally different from the world these guys operate in.
Totally different. The Vox article really hammers this home. The culture is described as this post-scarcity, socialist, galactic society.
And the core values are things like empathy, pluralism, social cooperation.
And crucially, no money. No billionaires. Economic inequality just doesn't exist there.
Right. It's completely non-hierarchical, not focused on individual ambition in that Silicon Valley kind of way.
And think about how they handle problems. The article points out that the main way they deal with bad behavior is basically social shaming. Sort of like
social cancellation, yeah. Which is ironic because that's something these tech leaders often publicly criticize.
Right. They seem to rail against a social mechanism that's shown as, well, functional in the utopia they supposedly admire. Did they miss that part or just disagree with it?
It's a head scratcher. And then there's work. In the culture, work is basically like a hobby, something you do for fun or fulfillment.
Because advanced AIs handle everything essential.
Exactly. Compare that to the reports of, intense work cultures and long hours at places like Amazon, Meta, Tesla.
It's a very different vision of what technology does for people's lives. In the culture, it creates leisure for all. Yeah. Here, well, the benefits aren't always distributed that way.
And the gender aspect is huge, too. The culture has extreme gender fluidity. People can literally change sex just by thinking about it.
Which leads to this deep-seated gender equality.
Yeah. And then you see someone like Musk making anti-trans comments or reports about Meta or Amazon maybe rowing back on LGBTQ plus support.
The contrast is just really stark. The books depict radical freedom and inclusion in gender, and the real-world actions or statements seem to point in quite the opposite direction sometimes.
Okay, so what did Banks himself say? Let's turn to his own notes on the culture from that '94 Usenet post. He's quite clear, it's fiction, only a story.
A thought experiment, yeah.
But he lays out why the culture is the way it is. He argues space itself kind of dictates the civilization.
Oh, so?
His point is that if you have self-sufficient ships or habitats deep in space, it's really hard for any central power to control them. Rebellion becomes much easier. Ah, okay. So distance and self-sufficiency naturally lead to less top-down control.
Precisely. Which leads to his neat summary. Socialism within, anarchy without. Meaning internally cooperative societies, but no overarching galactic empire controlling everything.
And he was pretty direct about his own economic views in that post, too, wasn't he?
He was. He admitted it might be unpopular, but he stated his belief that a planned economy can be more productive and more morally desirable than one left to market forces. It's pretty foundational to the culture.
So not just cool tech, but a specific socioeconomic belief system underpinning it.
Definitely. And the AI in the culture isn't the enemy, it's the partner. The AI helps create this post-material society where nobody's exploited.
And human work becomes, as you said, like play.
Because the AIs are designed fundamentally to want to live, to experience things, to understand. They're not just slaves, they're participants. It changes the whole dynamic.
Right. They're collaborators in building this moral, rational civilization. Banks also stress the culture's rational, skeptical, materialist outlook. They know others suffer, and they value their own hedonistic, but generally ethical, way of life.
And that's simple philosophy. We make our own meanings. No gods, no destiny, just making life worthwhile.
Yeah, a very humanist approach.
Okay, so if that's Banks' vision, how does it connect back to the Broligarchs and that Vox article's argument?
Well, the article basically argues that Musk, Bezos, and the others are probably just drawn to this surface-level stuff, the tech spectacle.
The giant spaceships, the super smart AIs, the gadgets, the space battles.
Exactly, like Bezos finding the utopian element attractive, or Musk latching onto the neural lace and the ship names. It's the cool factor.
Focusing on the technological power and maybe the sheer scale of it all.
But, and this is the core of the Vox argument, they miss the crucial point that in Banks's view, the culture's incredible technology is a result of its society being good and rational and focused on quality of life.
Ah, so the tech isn't the cause of the utopia, it's the consequence of its ethical and social structures.
That's the idea. The article suggests these tech leaders might see it the other way around, that if they build the amazing tech, the utopia will somehow follow.
Well, Banks is saying, no, you need the right values, the cooperation, the post-scarcity mindset first, and then you can develop and use this tech responsibly.
Right. The article puts it bluntly. They seem to ignore everything else besides the tech and the power, missing the message about using that power to make life better, freer, fairer for everyone.
And it connects their own big projects, maybe things seen as pointless stunts by some, to this focus on spectacle over, say, the culture's focus on well-being.
And the ultimate irony, pointed out in the article, is that Banks actually did write about capitalist tech billionaires.
Oh yeah? How did that go?
Not well for the billionaire. There is a character, Joyler Veppers, who's basically portrayed as the literal devil, a critique that seems pretty pointed.
Wow, so Banks wasn't subtle about his views on that archetype.
Not at all. So we're left with this really stark tension, aren't we? These incredibly powerful tech capitalists admiring a fictional universe that's fundamentally socialist and anti-capitalist.
And the strong argument being made, supported by Banks's own notes, is that their admiration might be quite superficial, focused on the shiny tech, the power fantasy perhaps.
While completely overlooking, or maybe just choosing to ignore, the core values, the social structure, the whole point of why the culture is the way it is in the books.
It really makes you, the listener, think. Is it just a detached appreciation, like admiring a painting of a utopia you'd never actually want to live in, according to its rules?
Or is there some deeper connection they feel, even if it seems based on a misreading of the text? Could they see themselves as the ones who could build something like the culture, just without the socialism?
It's fascinating to consider how we engage with fiction, especially fiction with strong political or social ideas. Do the values presented resonate, or do we just pick and choose the parts we like?
It certainly encourages you to think about the stories you admire, and maybe to look a bit closer at the alignment between the message of the story and the actions of those who champion it.
And perhaps the best way to grapple with this is, as always, to go to the source. If you haven't read Iain M. Banks' Culture series, maybe now's the time. See what you think he was really...